Hi, and welcome to the first of our Future of Payroll webinars. Today we are looking at payroll in the cloud, and we're excited to be joined today by Mark Paraskeva, who's the CEO and founder of Payroll, with an I, for reasons that will soon become clear, who is a true innovator when it comes to payroll. So before we begin, let's start with some introductions for those of you who aren't familiar with either of us. My name is Helen Armstrong, and I'm the CEO of Silver Cloud HR. We're an HR and payroll advisory company working with the small to mid-market to help them automate their HR and payroll functions, which is often through introducing new technology, but it's also through looking at organisational design and process, and sometimes just how to do things a little bit differently. I'm an HR professional. I did my qualifications 10 years ago now. So I'm an HR person first and foremost, but did form Silver Cloud 10 years ago when I saw there was a bit of a gap in the market for cost-effective advice and support around HR and payroll technology. And so since we formed the business 10 years ago, we've helped over 100 businesses on their HR and payroll transformation journeys. And the first 8 to 9 years have been pretty much heavily focused on HR transformation, actually. We've seen lots of change in this area. So it's actually exciting now to see that the change is shifting to payroll, and we're starting to see what the future holds for our payroll colleagues. So hopefully this webinar series will help you to understand what's happening in this space. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Helen. So I've been in the software industry most of my career and moved into payroll actually around 8 years ago in 2012. And I was staggered by how manual the payroll process was. I just couldn't, believe it. And having worked in the industry for about 5 or 6 years, I started thinking about, well, how could one automate payroll? And it took quite a while because it's obviously quite a complicated process. And about 2.5 years ago, I sort of came up with a number of ideas about how payroll could be automated. And so a little bit like Helen, I formed my own startup. And so we're a fintech startup. The name is Payroll, as you can see with an I in it. And essentially we're about automating payroll. And you're going to see some of the product today.
Thanks, Mark. So if we look at today's agenda and what we're going to cover, we'll start off by looking at what we mean by the cloud and how we're using it every single day in our normal lives before going on to talk about payroll itself and the problems as we see them today. Then we'll discuss the benefits that the cloud can bring when it comes to payroll, not just for the payroll manager or the person responsible for running it, but also for employees and the business as a whole. Mark will then take us through a short demo of his cloud-based payroll software, demonstrating how the cloud can change the way we think about payroll. And then we'll also touch briefly on how cloud-based payroll can open up options for more automation and pay on demand. 2 subjects that we'll be looking at in greater depth later on in our Future of Payroll webinar series. Please register for these after this one so that you can see the bigger picture and get some further insight into the future of payroll. We'll be sending out details for registration to all those who have attended today's webinar, as well as publishing them on both of our websites and, of course, social media. So let's start by taking a look at life in the cloud as we see it today. I think it's fair to say, Mark, isn't it, that the cloud pretty much dominates most of our lives today. And if we look at what we're doing on a regular basis, we're now shopping online, we're banking online, we're watching TV on demand, booking holidays online. Everything's all online using these cloud-based systems that are available on demand, and we can do it anytime, anywhere, and it's all looking at real-time data. And if we compare that to the world of HR from what we've seen over the last 10 years, we've already seen some real huge advantages of what cloud-based software can bring to an HR function. And actually, you'd be pretty hard pushed now to source any HR software that wasn't already in the cloud. But if we look at payroll, the payroll industry hasn't quite kept up, has it, Mark? Can you just talk us through a little bit about the history of payroll and the current state of affairs as you see it?
Sure. Thanks, Helen. Okay. Well, just before sort of starting, I think if I reflect back on, the information you presented, there's probably 3 mega trends that sort of weave their way through the industry. The first one, as you pointed out, is everything now is in the cloud, or what we call software as a service, typically delivered through mobile devices and online. And then when you think about a lot of those services you described, Helen, behind them, there's a huge amount of automation that happens. When you press a button, lots of things get sort of kicked off into action. And then, of course, the other thing that you see at the same time too, is that all of these new sort of services allow you to do things in different ways. So suddenly we can, we can look at movies on demand. We can call a taxi on demand and things like that. So I'd say these three mega trends probably all started, if we all think back to probably about the time we got iPhones, about 10 years ago, and they really weave their way through all of the examples that you showed. But exactly as you say, Helen, if we think about payroll, it really hasn't changed very much. So payroll today sort of looks a bit like this. So we've got a payroll operator who uses some payroll software. And so the payroll operator, typically has a number of things they're responsible for that are sort of listed here. They're responsible, they collect the data, they enter data, and so forth. And of course, the payroll software is, does the calculation and stores the data. And that sort of worked because for most companies, the payroll operator sort of been able to adapt the system to what's required, whereas of course the payroll software has been fixed. And if you sort of draw a box around these two, that's what we sort of call the basic unit or atom of payroll. And essentially that's the same, across the country, and in fact across the world. Payroll is done this way everywhere. And so what happens is, the person running payroll has to get the key pieces of data like starters, leavers, salary, shift, and so forth. Perhaps that might come from an HR or finance function. Of course, they then have to communicate out to the workers, pay slips, all other kind of pay documents, as well as managing holiday and sickness and timesheets and so forth. They may have to seek approval from managers, because often they're not the person that approves things. It may well be obviously someone else, it likes to be. And of course, they have to interact directly with HMRC. So on or before every payroll, you've got to transmit all the information to HMRC. And of course, before payroll, you've got to do things like pick up tax codes. Of course, everyone's now auto-enrolled, so pensions are really a key part of every payroll process. So you've got to send data to the pension provider, as well as pick up things like opt-outs and refunds. And then, of course, right at the end of the process, really, really important point, of course, you've got to transmit all the payment information to the bank that you're using to obviously move money from the employer to the employees. And then increasingly, there's a lot of data, as you mentioned, Helen, that's held in HR systems or ERP systems or time and attendance systems. And so that, there may be a whole sort of host of data that has come from those systems too. So the interesting thing about, this picture is, this hasn't changed in 50 years. And so most of the payrolls that are out there today, may well have been developed in the 70s or 80s. And, it really is the same approach, 50 years ago as it is now, that same old process where that one person's responsible. So that's really, how payroll looks today. And if you sort of reflect back on the examples you gave, Helen, it's clearly been left behind in terms of, the mega trends and the sorts of things that we see today. So you kind of step back and you say, what's wrong with traditional payroll? And I've listed there sort of on the right some of the key things that, are, I'd say, limitations and issues with today's payroll. But in fact, what's interesting is you may actually turn the question around, and instead of saying what's wrong with traditional payroll, you might ask, well, what's right with it? And the answer is not a lot. It really doesn't meet the needs of today's payroll professionals. I don't think it's particularly resilient to events such as, the outbreak that we're facing today. And I think what we can clearly see is, payroll being such an old, antiquated process, it's just not future-proof. So, for example, it doesn't support the sorts of flexible working, we're expecting from workers today. Why should you have to work, to a monthly payroll cycle? Why can't you work for multiple employers? Why can't you work and get paid by the day? So lots of examples in terms of flexible working trends that absolutely aren't supported by payroll today. So when we sort of reflected on this, the thinking was, well, how can payroll in the cloud sort of help? How can it address some of these shortcomings that we sort of just saw in the last couple of slides? And so the idea behind payroll was that we take all of the functions that were performed by both the payroll software and the payroll operator. And the idea was how much of that could we automate? How much of that could we automate in the cloud? And in fact, what we found was a huge amount we could now automate using the cloud approach and cloud technologies that just wasn't possible 50 years ago. So for example, we can make the system responsible for running payroll. We can actually allow data to be collected from employees and managers, and people direct enter their data. we can put a level of expertise in the software. So whilst we're not saying we can automate every single part of the process, a huge amount we can automate, and hopefully we're going to see that in the demo as we move through the slides later on. So just to kind of wrap up, so, well, why should anyone care, right? You're watching this webinar and you're saying, well, what would be the benefits of cloud-based payroll? Well, let me quickly run through them. So I'd say the first one is, the obvious one is, you've got no hardware or software to worry about, nothing, because it runs in the cloud. So guess what? You never have to worry about another upgrade. You never have to back up your data. You never have to worry about archives or any kind of management. And of course, even if it's not, you know, the payroll person is doing that, it could actually be someone else. It's still a significant cost and perhaps time and expense for someone to do. So that's obviously something that's not required if you move to the cloud. The second thing is that the way the system works, and you're going to see that, I think, in the demo, is it all happens in real time. And that's interesting because payroll today isn't real time at all. And in fact, one of the reasons why HR and payroll today don't work well together is HR's interactive in real time and payroll's not. And so this idea of real time, particularly around analytics and reporting and making those facilities available on demand, is something that, you know, is available with a system like this that you just won't get otherwise. I think the third reason is around errors and stress. So really important, and hopefully you'll see that in the demo, is that using a cloud-based system, you can actually eliminate errors in a way that's absolutely not possible with a desktop system. And at the same time, you can actually de-stress the process. And I'd say, I think in the current climate, this is really, really important. So some real big advantages for payroll and or HR people here too. And then finally, the benefits, huge benefits in terms of cost and time by automating this. And again, we'll see that as we go through the demo. So those are really probably the benefits of cloud-based payroll. So if we sort of think about how does this look like, it's sort of something like this. So the system runs in the cloud, and essentially it connects to all the participants. So I think the first one, and this is quite interesting, is workers directly interact with the payroll system. So they can get their pay slips out of the system, but importantly, they can also provide information to the system. They can provide, for example, their bank account details or their address or their starter declarations. They just interact with it directly instead of having to send information somewhere else. Managers can approve things immediately, like timesheets or other things. HR finance get the ability to run reports or perhaps, you know, upload a bonus spreadsheet or upload a commission spreadsheet directly without having to go through a more complicated process. HMRC get notified automatically and we pick up tax codes. Bank information can be sent to, you know, to bank providers, either in the traditional way or electronically. Pension providers, again, will receive the files electronically, and we can also pick up opt-outs, refunds, and things like that. And again, if you're using payroll with an existing HR system, we can absolutely pick up things like starters, leavers, salary changes from that HR system, which would actually completely eliminate the requirement to enter any of that kind of information manually. So that's really quite nice too. And of course, when the payroll's finished and you want to move the final payment information into a finance or ERP system, again, that can be done completely automatically with no necessity to do sort of manual moving of data. So that's really how the picture looks like. It's payroll that should be all automated in the cloud.
That's great, Mark.
Thank you. All right, so if that's okay, Ellen, I think we'll just jump over and actually, you know, show the viewers a bit of the demo.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for them to see it. Yeah. Exactly,
and they'll get a feel for how it kind of works. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through, and so this is what it sort of looks like on the mobile app for a worker. And in fact, a lot of what you're going to see is going to be from that perspective. And so the first thing I wanted to show you is sort of this what we call a live payslip, and hopefully that gets everybody understanding a little bit about how the system works and how it works quite differently from existing systems. So let's run to that demo. Okay, so on the right, I've got my mobile phone as the worker's phone, and on the left it's going to be the admin screen. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to log in. Like, this is on any device, but just sort of simulating a phone. I'll log in as Robinson Crusoe, excuse me. And you can see the very intuitive interface there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap on Live Payslip. You'll see that it took a couple of seconds, but I just ran my own payroll. So you can see my gross pay, you can see my deductions, you can see my net pay. You can see what, the day I'm going to get paid and the bank account, and you can see the national insurance and the pay. It's all been calculated for me on the fly. But look at this. I sometimes get a lump sum, and I can see that it was skipped. And I'm actually due it this month, so I'm going to call up my admin who just logs in. So, for example, I'm telling them on the phone it's missing. They go straight to me, a very similar interface. If they've got thousands of employees, they can quickly look me up just with a few letters, and they can go straight to my pay item, and they'll see immediately, I think when we click on lump sum here, which is that one at the bottom, that it was indeed missing and it was forgotten. So right there and then, the £432 lump sum can be added by the HR or the admin person, the payroll person, whoever, and that's done. They finished. They don't need to do anything else. And I might still be on the phone at this time, and I can literally go back home and rerun my own live payslip. And you can see I picked up that lump sum automatically. So again, I'm running my own payroll and I'm picking up data live. And of course, I've got an increased net pay because of that. So I know what I'll be getting, which is really important. Now, just to give you another example, the whole system is live. So all changes kind of get mapped through live. So if we show, for example, what the effect of a tax code change would be, so instead of a BR tax code, let's say I get the dreaded D1 tax code, and that gets added to my system automatically. Again, if I run the payroll on the right there as Robinson Crusoe, instead of 740 net pay, I go back to my live payslip, I'll unfortunately see that the pay has been reduced because of that tax code to now 1,010. So hopefully you can see that the way the whole system works is live, and me as an employee, I'm able to run my own payroll anytime, 24/7, to see exactly what I'm going to be due at the next payday. So I suppose in summary, a couple of things is, first of all, pay is ready from day one, and day one might be the beginning of the month or the beginning of the week if it's weekly. So you don't have to wait to the end. It's actually available for everybody on the first day of the pay cycle. And two things, that means no stress for payroll people because it's kind of ready, and then you can just add more data incrementally. And important, as you saw there, we were actually able to find an error and actually eliminate it just between, by the worker looking at their payslip.
Looks really good, Mark. I mean, essentially what you're saying is it's going to be like we're going to manage our money at work like we do at home right now. So like with our own online banks, we can check our bank every single day, can't we, with our apps? If something doesn't look quite right, we can action it rather than having to wait to the end of the month for when we get the monthly statement through the door like we used to. So it's just bringing work in line with what we're doing at home, I guess. It's quite a game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example, Helen. It's exactly like, in the consumer world, we're used to these things, and we can do things like you say, check your online banking and check if you received a payment. And it's exactly the same for payroll. The worker can now check exactly what they do. So yes, exactly.
Yeah, and also manage their own money better. I mean, we're in April, everyone will be getting new tax codes. You can actually see before you get paid what you are going to be paid, so you can manage your money better, can't you?
Absolutely. One of the big questions is exactly as you say, that no one knows what, if I got a lump sum, what would it translate into net pay? So this way they know exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that was the live payslip. So if we kind of move to the next example, which sort of really, I think, goes along with that. So let's look at the self-service aspects of the system. So we're going to look at a couple of the features here. First of all, my tasks, and secondly, my details, and we'll sort of show both of those two in the next demo. So what we're going to do here on the left screen as the admin is we're going to add a brand new employee. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pick the company. So let's say we've got a new starter. It's going to be me. So Google unhelpfully does put in the emails sometimes. Anyway, so it's going to be me, Mark Paraskeva. Pop in my phone and my title. So you'll notice here that we're putting in the absolute minimum of data just so that we can contact the person. Nothing else at all at this point. So the only couple of other bits of data we need are, we do need a start date. Obviously every worker in the system has a start date, that's normal. And then of course you don't need to put a password. You'll see in a moment I'm going to create my own password as the employee. So the only other couple of bits of data that we do have to supply are HMRC do want to know hours worked, so unfortunately that does need to be added. And there's a couple of other bits of data down here, like date of birth. Yes, I'm not quite that young. Gender and an NI number. So really the bare minimum that's needed just to set the worker up. And that's added. So that's it. That's all the admin would have to add, the HR person or the payroll person has to add. Now, based on doing that, I'm now going to receive, Mark Paraskeva, I'm actually going to receive an email. And let's look at the email that I'm going to get. And so the email says, welcome to payroll. So it's actually created an account for me. Your new account's ready. And there's a couple of things you have to do. You have to set your own password and then log in and do my task. So the first thing we'll do is we'll kind of click on here and we'll set our own password. Now, this reset password form works exactly the same way as any other online service you'd be used to. So you pop in your email so you can reset your password, and it works exactly the same first time round as it would if you forgot your password, you know, in a week or a month from now as well. So it's nothing that the admin or needs to look after. It's all completely automated. So I now get an email coming back, again, a couple of seconds, and this is sort of it's a secure time limited email. So this is only valid for a certain period. So I can now set my own password. So I pop this in just like I would any other system. And I've now set my password, and of course I can change it any time as well as I want. So that's me done. So we've added an employee, the employee set their password, and I can just now go and log in. So here I'm logging in on my mobile phone with the new account I've set the password for. And yes, I've got one task to do. So the task I've got to do is to complete the steps to add the missing information. So it's to add the employee details that are missing. So you can see at the top there, sort of in gray, are all the fields that were added, you know, by the administrator. So kind of my email, phone number, and so forth. And the ones I've got to add are these ones here in white. So of course I know my address. I'll just pop that in there. So we'll put in line 1. And in fact, no, I'm actually going to skip line 2 just to show you how that works. I'll pop in my postcode. So the system's expecting a certain minimum level of information. And in fact, because HMRC require 2 lines of address, I actually have to put in that second line. So I'll pop that in there. I won't show you, but of course I'm required to put in my bank account name, a 6-digit sort code, and of course an 8-digit account number as well. So that's all checked. Now, here's the nice thing. I also put my employee statement directly on line 2. So I can now say that this is my only job. And along with that, of course, I put on if I've got a student loan to go in the system, or if I've got a postgraduate loan, that gets popped in too. And again, this information that's classically collected on the new starter form, but of course is directly entered again from the employee's mobile, or in fact any device, and goes straight to the system to sort of do the default tax codes. So hopefully you've seen that self-service example there in my tasks. It's direct entry by the person who's got the data, hugely reducing time, of course. And importantly, you know, payroll people love this, and HR people love this, is no more paper starter forms, which can only be a good thing too.
Can definitely only be a good thing. Right? It's one of the first things when we go into any company and we look at their HR and payroll processes, we start with, okay, show us the paper. So it's nice to see that you don't need any. And you alluded to earlier, obviously we're recording this through the coronavirus crisis, where people are working from homes. We can't deal with paper anymore, can we? So having everything online and processing everything online from a business continuity point of view, it just keeps things moving, doesn't it? We're not dependent on being in our offices, and we can do this from anywhere. So it's really refreshing to see.
No, that's an excellent point, Helen. I think, you know, the very thought of passing pens and paper between people is something that, yeah, doesn't bear thinking about. I agree.
And bad for the environment. We don't need paper for the environment too.
Indeed, absolutely, indeed. Okay, so the next bit I want to jump to is my documents. So this is sort of pretty easy and pretty intuitive. I think you'll get that. You'll see how this works straight away. So I'm actually going to show this, change the form factor now, and actually flip to an iPad. So again, as you can see, the system will work on any form factor, mobile, a tablet, or screen. Just tap on my documents, and you can see all the documents. That's for me as a worker, all arranged nicely by the month, you know, that they were paid. And of course, I can also flip to the year. So let's actually go back to last year and look at the documents last year. And what I'm now going to do is just go and look at the P60 at the end of last year. So I just tap on that. Now, while that's generating, a couple of words, is I'm actually generating my P60 for the first time ever. This was probably never ever generated before. So it's been generated on demand, literally by me tapping that link. You know, there it is there, I can access it anytime, it's kind of always there. So if we actually flip back to the current year, the other thing I wanted to show you is that these documents appear, all the ones we ticked, already been approved pay runs, so they're finished, but documents are also available even if they're not approved. So let's just have a look at a payslip very, very quickly. So again, I'm generating this payslip on demand, takes a few seconds, but it's never been done before. So the top, that sort of top block looks very much like the mobile, you know, my payslip we saw already. So just the same sort of net pay information. In fact, most people don't look any further than that. If they're interested to see more details further down, like period and year date, they can. And then what we also did at the bottom is we actually included all the information for a worker. And this is great from GDPR perspective because the right for any worker to access their data and the right to rectify it all gets kind of automatically done just by providing this detailed payslip. So the final one, just to quickly show you, is the P45. So again, that works in the same way. But the thing I want to point out here is that P45 appears just by the administrator putting in a leaving date. So nothing else has to happen. It automatically appears there. I can even see the draft P45 before the pay run's been finalized with this watermark. And of course, once the pay run's approved, then of course the watermarks actually removed. So that's pretty much it. You know, that's how easy my documents are on any device. And I think the thing I wanted to point out here is that, you know, these are literally 100% automated. So there's actually no time that's required by the payroll person to produce any of these types of reports.
So, Mark, the payroll manager hasn't had to do anything for those documents to be created there. It's all done between the software and the employee.
That's right, and that's a good point. Thanks for highlighting that, Helen. Because, you know, of course, all payroll systems will produce reports. I mean, otherwise, of course, you wouldn't buy one. But of course, if you think about any report on a payroll system, there are two steps. So one is you have to generate it, and the other one you have to distribute it. And alas, even some pay slips are still distributed on paper, but of course, some are electronic. But even in every other system, you've got to do those two steps. You've got to generate and distribute, even if it's electronic distribution, maybe on a cloud portal or by email. But in our system, you don't do any of those steps because, as you saw, the link automatically appears in the worker's mobile phone, and they generate the report on demand when they want to look at it. So it's absolutely 100%.
Brilliant.
Okay, all right, so let's move on. So the next thing I wanted to show you was timesheets. Now, an important point just I want to point out is that some companies use timesheets and some don't. If you use this feature, obviously it appears as you're seeing here, but if you don't have this feature turned on, then that icon and that basically that row will be missing from the mobile view. But let's just see how timesheets work between workers and their managers. So on the right, I've logged in as Robinson Crusoe, and on the left is going to be my manager on their tablet. So what I'm going to do now is I'll kind of go, there's the manager on the left, sorry. I'll pop in now and just go to the timesheet area. So you can see all my completed timesheets, they're already listed there. And we actually support a full range of timesheets. So we support daily, hourly, weekly, pretty much, there's no limit to types of timesheets we can provide. So let's actually go ahead and create a daily timesheet. So the first thing we do is we pick the week that we want to enter the timesheet for. So these timesheets are arranged in weeks, but you could have also a whole month if you wanted as well. And on this particular daily one, we actually fill in just basically half days. So we'll say on this day we were at work on both times, and you can see immediately on the right there, the system calculates the amount that's due. And if we copy that value down, you'll also see that a non-public holiday, of course, pays at a different rate, £109 instead of £218. So again, there's no limit to the number of rates you can have for the various days. So let's assume I work those 2 days. So at the bottom there, I get a total automatically calculated for me about how much I'm due, 327. And then I've got a couple of options here. Now, I can either just save this and fill it in as I go along, or I can submit it. What I'm actually going to do is save it because I'm not sure if I'm actually going to do some more work this week. So let's assume the week moves on. And let's assume I didn't do any more work, so I've obviously finished the week. So I'd now like to edit that timesheet, and I'm now going to send it for approval because it's all finished. So I just go down the bottom, and I just say submit for approval, and that's it. I'm pretty much done. And you can see there that this has actually gone off to William Tell for approval. So I know where it's gone to. So if we move over to the tablet screen on the left now. Sorry, just before we do that, I wanted to show you that if I go back to my live payslip, that timesheet does not yet appear. It's not yet been approved, and therefore it does not appear in my live payslip. So what I'll do is William Tell's been notified now that there's a timesheet that needs his approval. It's the same sort of interface. He pops into my tasks, and as you'd expect, he's got a few things to do, but one of them is the Robinson Crusoe timesheet, in fact, the one we just sent over. So all he has to do is he can see, you know, if you like, the day and time and so forth, and he just click on it. Now, when he reviews the timesheet, excuse me, it looks exactly the same as the one I entered, so you can see that same information. If he's happy with it, of course, he can approve it. Now, what I'm going to do now is just not approve it. And in fact, the system will basically tell him, well, he can't not approve it without a remark. So if there was something wrong, he could not approve it. But let's say in this particular case, we are going to approve it. So we literally go down here and we'll click on approved, and it's approved. Now that's all I have to do as the manager. I'm done. I can just log out. And if we pop back over to me as Robinson Crusoe, you can see I don't have a timesheet there before. But of course, if I go back home and I rerun live payslip, I will now pick up that £327 timesheet. So it's listed there in daily pay, that working pay down there. Of course, it's all been included in my payroll calculations, so I can see what the net effect of that is. And as Helen pointed out earlier, I know what I'm going to be getting in terms of net pay for that particular timesheet. So there you just saw there that, you know, timesheet submitted by a worker, approved by a manager, that whole flow done without having to sort of go through any paper-based, you know, flow through any kind of payroll or HR person. So hopefully you can see with that sort of example is that can lead to, you know, system direct entry with 0 errors, and of course I think a huge reduction in time.
It certainly makes the process a lot easier. We work with a lot of companies who are often multi-site, and they're trying to fill in timesheets on paper, and then you have to work out how to get the paper to the manager to approve them, and it's going in the post, and the whole process can become really quite complicated. This just takes all complexity out of it and actually reduces the risk of error, doesn't it? Because you haven't then got someone manually keying in all the data at the other end. So there's less risk of error, but there's also much more efficient use of time because you're not having to do that. So this is quite a game changer for a lot of companies.
Yeah, that's right, Helen. You're right. You know, errors can actually occur on both sides. You know, they often can occur when the poor worker fills them in because they have to do that calculation. And of course, most companies have quite complicated, you know, tiers of rates, so it's never the same rate on the same day. So often they can be filled in errors, and as you say, there could be errors at the other end as well. So yeah, this eliminates that totally.
Excellent.
Okay, so next thing I wanted to show you was absences. So again, this, you know, if you can enable this feature or not enable it. Of course, if it's enabled, it shows. So very, very quickly, if I just show you how that works. So you log in and you just tap on absences. So the first thing we'll see there is that we've got an annual entitlement of 25 days, and we've bought or sold 5 days. So of course we've got a total entitlement of 30. So you can see that straight away. And of course, if I do a booking as an employee, it probably just works the way you'd expect it to work. Of course, I'd enter the start date, I'd enter the end date, and based on my working pattern, obviously it would calculate, you know, how much I'm due. I won't actually go and put this in because obviously you'll know how it works. But one thing I did want to show you, again, so if we just remind ourselves, that was a 25-day holiday there as well. So what I'm now going to do is show you some of the power of the system. So on the admin screen, I'm actually going to go to Robinson Crusoe, and I'm going to actually set him as a leaver. So at the moment he's got no end date, so he's not a leaver. I'm actually going to put a leaving date and make him a leaver, so he actually leaves, you know, in the month. So that's done by HR or payroll there, and that, you know, that single effect does a couple of things. So the first thing is immediately the system automatically, you know, works out that he doesn't have, you know, 25 days anymore. He's only got 3.3 plus, of course, the 5 that he bought, and you can see what they're worth per day. I think 230 a day. But if the worker actually goes to their live pay slip, there's a couple of things that have also been automatically calculated for us, which are quite nice too. So the first thing, instead of getting a £2,000 salary, the salary's now been automatically prorated to 1,384 for those working days. So that's been done automatically. But the second thing the system's done, which is quite nice too, is that, remember I had those 3 days and the 5 days holiday? It's actually paid them out as holiday pay as well. So all that end of, leave for processing, and same for starter, by the way, is all taken care of completely automatically just by putting in that end date. And you can see the pro-ratering and the tracking of the holidays and the holiday payout done as well. So very simply, I think the advantages of that are that it's direct entry. So the worker puts their data in, it can just be approved. All the calculations are automatically done. And of course, that reduces time. And then one of the other features that people love about this is that for many companies, it actually allows them to introduce a holiday flex benefit where they wouldn't have it before, because all that flexing is taken care of automatically.
That's great. And holidays is one of those off payroll calculations, isn't it, Mark? That payroll people often spend a lot of time doing, because there is really no other way to do it, and no one's ever provided an automated solution to it. This is great.
No, absolutely right. It's absolutely one of those off payroll ones that people could do, with their spreadsheet or their calculator. Exactly.
It's always a spreadsheet, yeah.
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So just moving on to the last part of the demo. So I want to now flip from the worker and actually go back to sort of the HR or the payroll person, and just show you one of the analytics features, which is really quite powerful. So I'm just logging in here as, let's say, the HR director. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to My Analytics. I'll pick the company that I'd like to run analytics for, Advanced Mechanics. I'm going to use Excel format because obviously that's the one that we want to show the demo with. I click download, and as you can see in a second, that file's ready to go, in Excel. So I open that document up. It's kind of a data table ready to go. So I can click anywhere in it. And all I do at this point is I just do an insert pivot table. So we prepared this file ready to be pivoted in Excel. So there's 2 clicks to do that. And now I'm ready to start any query I want. So let's say I want to pick the actual pay date. So I just pick actual T. Let's say I want to look at gross pay. I'll pick gross pay. If I just move the actual T over, you can see immediately there, just by picking those 2 values, I can immediately see my gross pay over all the months of the payroll that's been run. So let's say in addition to that, I want to now just also look at the pension, the company contribution on the pension side. So again, we just type in pension, pick in company contribution, and that gets immediately added. So I can see that expenditure too as a table. So let's assume I want to put this in, say, a presentation. So let's now say we want to convert that to a chart. So all we have to do is click on pivot chart, and we kind of get that. If I want to make that a bit bigger, then all we need to do is move that into its own sheet. Again, a couple of clicks, so there it is there. And the final thing I want to do is pick a slightly different chart format type, because I actually wanted a stacked bar. So again, all I need to do is go to Design, change the chart type, let's pick a stacked chart, and there it is done. So hopefully you can see there, and probably, hopefully I took about, I think, less than 60 seconds, that full integration with Excel means that people can literally do any types of query, with the system. Everyone's got Excel, and everyone's sort of at least got some familiarity with Excel. You might need to learn a couple of extra steps, as you've seen there. But it means that we can provide a level of real-time reporting and analytics that's absolutely impossible to kind of achieve in any of today's systems. So a couple of points just to point out there is that this happens in real time. So that analysis I did can be done from the first day of the month. You don't have to wait till payroll's finished. It can be done in real time. And as changes happen, you can actually rerun this and pick up those changes in real time. Full integration with Excel, as you've seen there, and literally unlimited flexibility. And the reason why we kind of picked Excel there was, when we looked at the sorts of analysis that, HR, perhaps finance and payroll people want to do, there was no way you could sort of replicate the power of Excel. And so we thought this was a really nice feature to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got lots of payroll clients, and reports is always high up there in their list of issues when we ask them about how their current software's working for them. And some of them have horror stories about where they can only get limited amounts of data, or they're trying to work with their software vendor to get new reports or different reports, and they're being charged lots of money in order for those to be created. So for someone to be able to just download all the data and do what they need to do with it in Excel, I think that's, you know, something I haven't really seen before. So that's amazing. And like for me, certainly as a business owner, we've been using Mark's software internally for a few months now, and I've been amazed at the level of the detail my finance manager is able to give me, and she's able to give me the data I need at the beginning of the month before the payday rather than after payrolls run. And certainly for me that needs to be looking at forecasts and cash flows and things like that, it's making a massive difference to us as a business. And she's still managing to do it in a lot less time than it was taking to run the payroll with the old traditional system. So I can certainly vouch for that. Great. So thank you so much for the demo, Mark. It really does look good. It's definitely going to change the way that payroll teams are working internally within their own team, but also actually the way they're engaging with the business, I think. And like I said, the way that payroll managers are able to talk to their CEOs and provide the information they need. I know for us, Sandra, our finance manager, she spends her time now answering my questions about the data she's provided me rather than actually processing anything. So if that's going to work for me as a small business owner, imagine what it can do if you're a much larger business. It's really quite exciting. So Mark, from your perspective, what are the main difference we're going to see in the future of payroll compared to today?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Helen. All right. So I think I was just trying to summarize on this chart, you know, kind of what it looks like today, what it looks like tomorrow, and perhaps why, you know, why would you care? So I think the first thing that we sort of touched on already is that instead of having to think about payroll is on the desktop and perhaps only done in the office, as you can see in our system here, it literally runs on the cloud. So that means it's absolutely accessible anywhere. So whether you're at home, most people are today, or whether you're on a holiday, it's accessible. It's actually usable on any device. So whether it's a mobile, a tablet, a PC, or a Mac, there's really no limitations. You can use any browser that you like, whether it's Safari or Firefox or Chrome. And so it's accessible anywhere. And again, importantly, there's no sort of software or hardware to worry about. So just like all those other services you described right at the beginning, Helen, you know, whether it's Netflix or, you know, whether it's online banking, you know, you don't need to have any system yourself. It works really the same way. So no hardware, no software, nothing to manage. So that's really the first clear, obvious difference. I think the second one, you know, the next couple of rows probably sort of go together in some way. And that is, if you think about payroll today, it's very manual and it's very batch processed at the end of the month or the end of the week. And in the system that, you know, we've demoed today, this is really completely opposite of that. So instead of being batch, it's actually real time and live. And instead of being manual, it's actually automated. And that gives you other benefits, you know, like on demand. So really, really couldn't be different. And why would you care about those two? Well, a number of things. First of all, you know, you've seen how errors can be eliminated using, you know, a cloud-based system, which is, you know, basically impossible in the system today. And importantly, that also hugely can reduce time and cost as well. And the other thing that I think is important as well for payroll people is, you know, our customers love this product because it really does de-stress the payroll process, because payroll is very, very stressful. And so anything that can help you remove that is great. And it kind of lets you know, react very quickly. And then the final one is that, again, if we think about how that payroll that was, you know, sort of invented 50 years ago, it was invented about this notion that one person did everything. And the best way I sort of describe it is, you know, imagine if you were ordering something from Amazon today and you had to call up, you know, this person and you had to tell them that you had a new address or you had a new bank detail or whatever, you know, you would never do it. And so in the same way, instead of having to sort of channel everything through one person who's sitting in front of a desktop system, the way, you know, payroll works in the cloud is that essentially everyone's a contributor. So it's self-service based, and whether you're a manager, an HR person, a finance person, or, you know, a worker or a manager, you literally access a system in the way you'd expect to access it, just like every other system that you described earlier, Helen. So it really is simple enough for everyone to use. So I think, you know, the benefits now, you know, I think I've said them very, very simply today. It's about reducing cost. It's about saving time. It's about getting errors to zero, and it's about less stress. And, you know, these are real benefits, you know, real hard benefits. And I think it's about having a system that's much more resilient, particularly in today's climate, and really much more flexible to, really meet the requirements of how the workforce are going to work in the future. And certainly when we look at our customers, they're way happy using a system like this and then they were with their old system. So that's what I think the benefits would be now.
Yeah, we need happier payroll. It's about time they had a system they deserved. Absolutely. So I guess if we look to the future then, Mark, the role of automation, which we're sometimes calling RPA, aren't we? Robotic process automation. It's going to be really pivotal in the payroll transformation journey, isn't it? So, if we can use automation to create real-time pay slips, as we saw there, we're potentially able to move to more regular pay and then on to pay on demand, which is a phrase that keeps cropping up in the payroll world at the moment. I'm hearing it a lot. I really do think that probably in 5 years' time, we are going to be looking back wondering how we were managing in the old traditional model. So it's exciting to track this through. For our webinars, we're going to be covering both automation and pay on demand in our final 2 instalments of our Future of Payroll webinar series with Mark. So please do register for these. We'll send you the details after this webinar. So just to finish up, so we at SilverCloud already know how great payroll is. As I said, we're using it internally already and have been for several months. And we're going to be sharing some more of our experiences of it in our next webinar, so do register for those. If you like what you see and you think that payroll could be a good fit for your business, you do have a couple of options when it comes to taking advantage of it. So if you don't have internal resource or are looking to outsource your payroll, we at SilverCloud can offer a fully managed service for payroll users where we'll take care of everything for you, including all the upgrades and integrations along with fully managing your payroll. Or if you run your payroll in-house and you want to implement payroll and keep it in-house, like we've done, you can purchase a software subscription directly by contacting Mark. Our contact details will be on the next slide. And if you're not sure which option is best for you and you just want to have a chat about what you think you can do, then feel free to reach out to either of us. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So we'd like to finish by thanking you for joining us today. Look forward to you joining us on our next webinars in the series, which will be focusing on RPA and pay on demand. If you found this webinar useful, please do share it with your colleagues and don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. Thank you.